So at the time the Santa Claus came out, there was actually a little bit of a risk factor to it, in that nobody knew if Tim Allen could actually carry a film. We knew he could carry a sitcom okay, but that was sort of the standard formula that was repeated over and over, and yeah, does that translate well into not only a theatrical film, but a Christmas film? And the answer is yes, he does, but not as much the story. Which is a good setup, but doesn't give much else on top of it. The movie centers around Tim Allen being a divorced dad with a son. He's trying to find a way to spend more time with him around Christmas, and sure enough, he accidentally yells at Santa Claus who's on top of his roof, causing him to lose his footing and, yes, kill himself. Pretty dark, actually. Trying to make his son feel better, he takes off the suit and puts it on, not realizing that he's actually entering into the Santa Claus. With an E, get it? So now he has the job of delivering all the gifts to all the kids around the world. He tries to decline it, but over time, he seems to keep putting on weight, growing long hair, and yes, even a white beard. Eventually he finds he just can't turn away and decides to take the job. All while his son starts telling everybody, and of course they don't believe him, and then he's roped in, and then nobody believes him, but of course they'll be proven wrong in the end, and I hate these stories. If it was more funny, I'd be more open to it, but that's one of its major problems. It's not that funny. Now, to the film's credit, I don't think it's trying to be that funny. I think it's trying to be more whimsical and magical, and it does have certain elements of that. The North Pole is a lot of fun, it definitely has some decent effects. There is certainly this idea that they want to give the size and weight to Santa, while also throwing in a little comedy, but again, the key words are little comedy. When you have Tim Allen as Santa Claus, you know you want a lot of funny stuff, and they don't really do that much. It's more trading it in for this story of him trying to convince everyone he's Santa Claus, nobody believing him, and then people getting more concerned, and just, you know where it's gonna go, so why are we watching it? Well, maybe a few reasons are that Tim Allen's not bad. He definitely has a charm factor to him, and to help him out, he has some enjoyable elves as well. I found it interesting that in this rendition, the elves are played by kids, not little people, and they're still supposed to be older, like some are several hundred years old, but they look like little kids. I guess that's their way of getting past child labor laws. At first I was somewhat offended by this because I thought, hey, isn't that kind of taking jobs away from little people by having kids acted instead? But the more I thought about it, the North Pole does look a little bit more jolly with a bunch of kids running around. And yeah, I know they're not really kids in this, but come on, they're kids. And they're happy and they're cheerful, and yeah, it just makes the place seem more upbeat. Which is not to say grown adults in the role aren't upbeat, but you can't capture it like you can with a kid. So I think it's fine, especially knowing that the majority of elf roles are still gonna have little people in them. The North Pole is a nice looking North Pole. It's very bright and colorful and definitely has a large scale to it. And yeah, it's obviously a set, but I don't mind. It still has sort of that magical element to it. But is there enough magic in this movie to overlook a painfully obvious story? In my opinion, no, but for a lot of other people, yes. If you can put up with that kind of story and don't really mind it, then there's still plenty of other elements on top of it to be enjoyable. Just not enough for me to get into it. It's not the worst, it's just kind of boring for me. But again, if it doesn't bother you, then I think this film will be a fun, magical ride. I just think there's more that can be explored and done with this idea. But hey, that's what we have sequels for, and I'll join you over in the next video for those. Well, it looks like I'm the only one who couldn't get into the original Santa Claus movie, as they made not one, but two sequels to this film, both with Tim Allen reprising the role. How do they hold up? Well, I guess like the first Santa Claus, there's some elements that are really magical, unique, and nice, while other moments are painfully predictable and extremely boring, and, well, do they balance out? Well, that depends which one you're looking at. In Santa Claus 2, The Mrs. Claus, Tim Allen has to find himself a wife and get married, or else all the powers of Santa Claus will disappear. And of course, being typical Disney, he only has a month to do it and convince her to marry him. Like that makes this really stupid. But what makes it good are some really genuinely romantic elements. And yes, it's still done in a month, and that's weird, but if you look at everything else as kind of this first date and just a couple slowly falling in love, then actually it's not that bad. He tries courting a principal at a school that at first he thinks is really cold-hearted, but the more he talks to her, the more he realizes that there's actually more to her than he thought. And their chemistry, I think, is totally believable and really charming, and leads to a lot of very nice romantic moments. But guess where it leads? That's right, he has to tell the truth about who he is, she gets angry and doesn't believe him, and it all starts over again. We saw it in the first film, it wasn't good then, why are we watching it again? But to the movie's credit, there's a subplot about a robot Santa who's taking over the North Pole, and it's surprisingly really funny. Let me rephrase that. It's so awkwardly acted that you can't help but find it funny. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it actually does get a giggle out of me. But then you gotta sit through another subplot about his son being put on the naughty list, which really you don't need. You could have cut this and everything would have been fine. And he also had to sit through some incredibly unfunny moments where Tim Allen seems like a jerk and is really annoying, but then at other times he seems really charming and really nice, and at other moments the comic relief can be really funny, at other moments they can be really not funny, and oh, it's just all over the place. But for me though, I at least give the movie credit that's trying something different. For the most part. There's another clause and there's another mission, but at the same time, we see more of the North Pole, and we see some really nice Christmassy moments, and we see Santa Claus actually being really charming, and yeah, Tim Allen actually is turning out to be a very unique kind of Santa Claus. It's still Tim Allen, but yeah, he sort of gives it his own spin. So I did find myself actually liking it enough, because yeah, there's enough unique things to it. The third one, on the other hand, is a bit of a different story. This one's called The Escape Clause, and we have Martin Short come in as Jack Frost, who's trying to totally dethrone Santa and take over his job. Well, that's all fine and good, but we have a subplot where his wife wants to bring her parents up, but they can't because they don't think they can keep a secret, so they try to convince him that it's Canada. Well, okay, that's kind of funny, that can work, but then we have yet another subplot with her about to give birth, and yet another subplot about him being too busy, and yet another subplot that's combining like 3 different movies where he goes back in time, and it's like he never existed as Santa, and what does that mean? So we sort of have Back to the Future and It's a Wonderful Life and the other Santa Claus movies, and any other movie you can throw in here that's not entirely original. There's still some strong elements, like I enjoy how a lot of the machines making the toys break down, so he has to make the bits of the toys that are still around into one other toy, a brand new toy that's actually pretty cool. Again, it's showcasing how the Tim Allen personality could actually make an okay Santa Claus. But the parents are miserable characters, most of the time is just spent with people being unhappy, not getting many laughs, even Martin Short is really underplayed in his comedy. But the designs are still really nice, and I really enjoy these enchanted side characters like the Easter Bunny and Father Time and stuff like that. They were a good addition in the second film, and they make much more of an appearance here, and I really like them. But for me, there's just not enough fun to it, or comedy. So yeah, on the whole, I actually would kind of recommend the second one if you can get through some of the but the third one just has too much for me. I give credit that they tried to do something new with the idea and at least try to evolve it, and when it works, it's great, but when it doesn't, it's a pretty awkwardly annoying Christmas. But if you're a Christmas junkie like me, you're gonna see it anyway. So check it out and draw your own conclusions.